to September. I hope everybody had a fantastic summer. Now it's that time of year again where we're, back into the groove. And, of course, it's always that time of the month where everybody wants to know just what is going on in the real estate market. And I will tell you as we get into this today, you're going to want to watch this whole video because I've got a lot of good stats. And I think you'll appreciate what I'm going to show you. I've got even some different stats that I normally don't show you that I also think you might find it interesting, especially if you're really looking at the market right now and trying to decide if this is a good time to buy or sell in this market. But first, you'll notice I've got my website on the front page, Your Home Sold Guaranteed with Cash Offer. And if we scroll down here, we launched this program, our seller programs, just in the month of May, and it's been very successful for us, especially in this more competitive market that we're in. We have had some people that have taken advantage of the cash offer program, but we've also had people take advantage of our revitalization program. And if you do have a home and you're thinking of selling it, well, you're going to see from these stats today that the market is quite competitive. We have a lot more inventory than we had a year ago, which means if you want to get top dollar for your house, you need to make some effort into making your home look its best so you can stand out above the rest. And I can't even begin to tell you how important that is. Just recently, I sold a house in the Northwest in the community of Evanston, and I was appalled as we went out and looked for these homes, and we were in the budget of around $650,000 to $800,000 range. We looked at all the homes in that area, and that included Hidden Valley, Evanston, and we went into Rocky Ridge for a couple of homes, but most of them were right in those communities right there. But what amazed me is most of the homes that we looked at were built in somewhere between 2006 and 2020. And it was shocking to see just how well lived in a lot of these homes were. The carpets were stained. The baseboards were all dirty and never been cleaned. All kinds of nicks in the wall needing paint. Just really well lived in. And you could see there was zero, and I mean zero effort was put into getting that home ready to be sold. And the buyer I'm working with really was just like a lot of other buyers, not really interested in moving in and doing a bunch of work. He went through a divorce a number of years ago. He's getting back into the real estate market. He has a lot going on with his job, just typical of most people. And he just said, Rob, I just don't have it in me to be replacing flooring and arranging that and painting. So we ended up having to look at almost 30 houses before finally one came on the market that was what we would consider to be priced fair, and some effort was put in. The house was in pristine condition, and of course, we bought it right away. So that's why we launched this program, exactly for that, because in this market, you see all this inventory and you might think, man, it's going to be hard to sell my house. If you make an effort and get your house ready, I'm telling you, it does not take a lot of work. I mean, carpet and paint is really not that difficult, but you will stand above all the other houses and you'll have a much better chance of selling. So I thought this was interesting. I follow this real estate magazine online every month, and they came up with this headline that said, RE/MAX forecasts cooler fall market with home prices set to dip 6.5%, which is, it's kind of a bold statement to make these predictions, number one. But number two, you're speaking for maybe the entire real estate market of Canada. And real estate is very, very local. I mean, what is happening in Calgary is not the same that's happening in Halifax, Montreal, or Toronto. So I sometimes struggle with these reports. And also, even in Calgary, you'll see with the stats today, the condo market is not doing very well in Calgary, but the detached home prices, they're holding up pretty good. But it gives the average person looking at that, at this report, and they're thinking, oh my goodness, if I'm a buyer, maybe I should just wait and the prices are going to come down, and if I'm a seller, boy, I don't know, I'm not going to get my price. Making it sound like whatever property you own, it's going to be worth 6.5% less by maybe the end of the year. And I just want you to know that that is not a real accurate number. That is just a broad-based number. And maybe it could be correct, but I mean, you're factoring in all kinds of different markets. You're factoring in condo markets in certain areas. We all know Vancouver and Toronto is really suffering in that area right now. So, that's just a really bold, broad statement. So just understand that when you see these kind of reports. But thought this was interesting and worth noting. 54% of Canadians believe this fall is a good time to strike a deal on a home. Atlantic Canada and the Prairies experienced year-over-year price gains between January 1st to July 1st across all markets, while Ontario and BC saw declines in 2/3 of the market. So let me just comment on that. I've been in this business for a long time, and in the spring, which is where a lot of people do get into the market, that is because people do generally like to move when the weather's warm. And so sellers put their house on the market and buyers come into the market. So you have a higher demand, but you also have a higher supply. In the fall months, you have less sellers that want to go on the market for, like I said, moving in the winter time is not the most ideal situations for people. So you generally do have less inventory to compete with. So if you're selling, that actually can work for you. And as a buyer, you're not competing with as many buyers. So the market does tend to be a little bit slower in volume. And, but I don't want to make it sound like, there's perfect opportunities for everyone, because truthfully, there isn't. It really depends on, what you're selling and what you're buying. But that being said, there can be opportunities. And I'll give you an example. One time I was selling a house in the community of Aspen Woods, and I had this home and it was dark. It was just a really dark floor plan. And we were on the market, I believe we went on late August that year, and I just could not sell that house, even though, price-wise, it was very competitive with the same homes, but everyone that came in, they didn't like the fact that the backyard was facing north. The homes that were behind that home, they all were at a higher elevation, and that just made it even less sunlight coming in. So the feedback was just over and over again that it was too dark. But interestingly enough, come November, the market had slowed down a little bit more, and suddenly we were the last house in that price range left on the market, and it sold in early December. So, you look at that and think, okay, that was a pretty good opportunity for the seller. We didn't have to reduce our price, but the buyer that came in didn't get there wasn't a lot of inventory to compare it to. So they liked the house, they liked the price range, and they bought it. And that's the kind of opportunities I'm talking about. So, when you're buying, you can find also situations where you might have a motivated seller. Maybe they're putting it on the market, in the late fall. Maybe it's a divorce. Maybe it's a situation where they're moving out of the city because of a job. Could be some financial turmoil. Some of these levels of motivation you don't always know when you see the houses, but you'll see them come up on the market and they're priced well, and there's not as many buyers to compete with. So that's where the opportunities are. But that being said, if you have a townhouse condo right now, there's a lot of inventory. That is going to be challenging. So let's get into some of the stats. I think you'll find it interesting. Okay, so here's the numbers for August 2025, and you'll see right there on the MLS, we did 1,989 sales, and that is down from 2,182 from August of 2024. So that is an 8.85% drop. But what we notice right here is the biggest change is we've got inventory of 6,661. So that is up 48.19% in inventory. And that's what's really affecting our market. Our month supply was only 2 months a year ago, and now we're at 3.35%. 3.35 months. So that is really why we're seeing some significant, amount of properties that are sitting on the market and not actually selling. So we've got to be mindful of that. And you'll notice that the sale price to list price, a year ago was 99.24% for the houses that sold, and now we're seeing it at 97.84. So this is very typical when you get into higher levels of inventory. You'll just find some sellers that are just a little bit more motivated to come down on their price because they know what's going on in the market. They know it's a very competitive market. And so if we see enough people starting to reduce their price or take lower offers, then you are definitely going to see the benchmark price be affected. And you can see right here, we were at 577,000 for the month of August. That's just August. And a year ago, we were at 601,800. So that's a 4.09% drop just for the month of August. But if you look at the year to date for Calgary, we're at 586,300. And year to date up until August of 2024, we were at 595,338. So that's only a 1.52% difference. So the overall market for the entire year, we haven't seen significant price drops overall. But let me be clear. There's some pockets in Calgary where we have seen as much as 4.5% drop in pricing, and it's mostly on apartment condos and townhouse condos, which I'll show you in just a minute. But overall, the prices are holding up. But what I've noticed is there's been a lot of sellers that have gone on the market and they didn't get their price and they went off the market. So if you didn't sell, you didn't bring the market down price-wise, but you still didn't sell your property. And we're seeing that. And that's both a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. The good thing is it's holding the market prices, which, if you're a homeowner, you're happy to hear that. And I think you'll find that, most people, unless they really have to sell, they don't want to sell their house for a large discount unless there is some real motivation as to why they have to sell. If it's job loss, divorce, moving out of the city, those type of things, you can get people that are willing to definitely take a lower price. But we haven't had enough of those people to bring down the entire market. So the entire market is holding up fairly well at this point. But if you scroll down here, this also gives you a good visual as to, where the inventory is. And you can see in the blue bars, that's our inventory now. And you can see that we haven't had that kind of inventory level since early 2021, late 2020. And you'll also notice if you go back all the way to, 2015, all the way to 2020, that was not a great year for real estate in Calgary. We had a buyer's market through all those years, and the inventory levels you can see were quite high in all of those years. So if this trend continues, and I think we're all hoping that it won't, but if it continues, obviously we're going to see price softening because there will be enough people who will start reducing their homes to get their homes sold in a highly competitive market where you've got higher levels of inventory. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up this video today by just showing you Calgary. And, I'm not showing you Cochrane, Airdrie, Strathmore, Chestermere, Okotoks, because this video would go on forever. But I will tell you, out of all those small towns outside of Calgary, Airdrie has the highest level of inventory right now. So it's the most challenging city to be selling in. So if you want to get information on those towns, just reach out to me and I've got some stats for you. But you'll see right here, this is, all the quadrants. We've got it broken down now into 8 different areas of the city. So 540,000 in the north. We're down 6.6 year over year. The northeast is down 7.6. to 490,600. The Northwest at 635,300, down 2.5. The West is down 2.4 at 707,000. And City Center, which we have a lot of condos there, 581, down 3.9. The East, kind of surprising, but 410,000 is the average at 7.4% is how low it went. And then we have the Southeast at 568, down 4.3, and the South at 577, down 2.9. Now I'm going to show you one last chart before we wrap up. So I've got some really cool data points on this chart, and I'm not going to show you everything because it's going to make this video go on too long, but this gives you an idea. This is Cranston, and in the last 12 months, there was 472 units that sold, averaging 30 days on the market, and the average sale is 636,312, and the average sale price to ask price is at 98.86. And we had 125 properties in the last 12 months that sold for over 100% of the asking price. Now, the reason this is a significant chart, and I'm showing it to you because if you want to get information on each individual community, or whether you're buying or selling, if you're maybe an investor and you're looking to buy a property and you want to know, just what is the ceiling of that community. If you want to invest in that community, the strength of that community, the turnover of that community, these are good stats to look at from an investor standpoint. But it's also good to look at when you're selling, just to see where you fit in. Like in Cranston, if you have a home that's worth a whole lot more, now keep in mind this includes condo. I can do another chart that just focuses on single family dwelling. So if I was focusing on single family dwellings, and we'll say the average sale was right around 800,000 or 775 for Cranston, you want to know where you fit in. Are you going to be above that range or below that range? And that gives you an indication of just how many buyers or the buyer pool that you would have to be able to reach out to, and also to give you an idea of the likelihood of how long it would take to sell your property. So I have a lot of data. I love looking at this stuff because it's very helpful for me to understand what's going on, but it's also really helpful for me to be able to help you understand what's going on. So as always, reach out to me if you've got questions and you just want to get any information at all about anything real estate. I do it freely. I do it with a smile on my face, and I don't expect anything for it because everything starts with a conversation. So everybody have a wonderful September, and we'll see you next month.